Hello, hello. Welcome to this week's New at 2. This is Kaylin by herself today, coming to you by myself, I should say, coming to you from the Fayetteville store in Arkansas. Today, I thought we'd have a fairly chill New at 2 so that I could give you guys a preview of this month's club. So if you don't come to club, of course we would love to have you join us. Club in Fayetteville is actually going on right now, but the rest of the stores we've got tomorrow, the next day, and then the next week. For our other locations, you can always go to besoin.com to see when club is coming to a store close to you. This month we're doing like last minute Christmas gifts, things like that. And so just as a little kind of sneak preview, I wanted to show you guys one of the projects that I created for you. So one of the things that we did is an advent calendar where you hang the number charm of the day of the month leading up to Christmas on each, day, like main piece, right? Which I shan't tell you what that part is because you have to come to club to see that part. We'll let that be a surprise. But the instructions had told me just to like go to my local, like craft supply store or party supply store and just like buy number charms. And you and I both know we can do better than that. So I popped over to my Floriani Total Control and I created number charms. So this is the final file, which anybody who is a Emerald member will receive this file in their email before the end of November with the rest of their club files. But I also am going to give instructions to club members and anyone who attends Club Live of how to digitize it themselves in case they want to do it a little bit different than the way I did it. Maybe they want a different font or something like that. So I'm going to take you through kind of the basic steps here of how we created this stitch out. So I'm going to open a new window here so that I have a blank workspace. Of course, it's just going to call it Design 5. You can save it with whatever name makes the most sense to you. Of course, Advent Number Charms, right, is what I went with. Something that you'll know what it is later. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to my shapes and I'm going to click on it there. Oh, let me scoot this back a little bit. And I want to make an ellipse, which is just a circle. The reason they say ellipse instead of circle is you can use it to create ovals as well as circles. It's not only perfect circles. But I'm going to click on that. And when I hover over the screen, I don't know if you can see it there, but my icon or my mouse, my cursor, looks like a little crosshair with a circle on it, or I suppose an ellipse. It would be whatever shape I had selected. In this case, of course, the circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and I'm going to drag. Now I can kind of hold shift to try and make it perfect, or I can do different key commands. But honestly, for me, I'm not worried about that right now. I'm just going to draw a circle because what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go back over here to my select tool. I'm going to select it, and then over here in my properties, I'm going to go to the transform, which is how we resize. Now I'll give myself a tiny pat on the back. I was darn close to perfect. We have 1.40 by 1.38, but it's not a perfect circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect, if it wasn't already, maintain aspect ratio. What maintain aspect ratio means is that if I increase the length of a design or the height of a design by 20%, it'll increase the width by 20% as well. Here I actually want to only change the height. I'm going to make that 1.4 as well. So we'll just 40, and then I do have to click apply, or you can hit the enter key for it to actually take effect. But now I know that I have a perfect circle here to work with. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is, let's see, I'm just going to move this here to my center. I just like that because I like to be able to see exactly where I'm at. because I'm going to use that as an alignment helper for my next part. If we go back to the design here, you'll see that I have a secondary circle up there. Now, if we zoom in, give me one second, there we go. If we zoom in, you'll see there is a jump stitch right here. I would trim that out manually, but it might be too close together to not be stitched on anything other than like a multi-needle. So what it is that this is the body of my number charm. And then this is the circle that I'll use my eyelet punch tool to punch out a circle so that I can then tie my number charm onto my advent calendar. So what I'm gonna do is I've got a few different options. I can go back here and I can draw another ellipse. I can also just click on this one and I can say copy, paste. What it's gonna do is it's gonna make a second one right on top of the first one. That's a little different than what you're maybe used to in things like PowerPoint where it offsets it. So sometimes it's not clear if you've made a second one by just looking at this screen. What you wanna do is go over here to your sequence view, which shows you all the steps, and check if there are two. And of course, I can see that there is a second one. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select that and I'm gonna move it over. And then it'll maintain my aspect ratio automatically if I change the size with one of my bottom squares in the corners instead of the ones in the center of the sides. So I'm just gonna bring it on down to the correct size. Now, correct size is a relative term. There is no automatic, like, scientific correct. And I also have not bothered at this point to size this to what the final size of the charm needs to be. Right now, I'm just building the shapes together. So for now, all I want is to do something that looks pleasing to me that I think is gonna work. Now, if you have a specific eyelet punch and you want to measure or read what it says the dimensions are on your eyelet punch to make sure that your circle can be cut out of inside of that stitch circle with your eyelet punch, by all means, go ahead and do so. A quick way to check the size, I can guesstimate here, but when you're doing something like an eyelet punch, it's really small increments. So to be sure of my size, I'll come over here to my ruler. And what I'll do, you'll see my cursor now has that ruler icon in it. And I will click and drag a line across. And I can see now the size, the distance from where I first clicked to where I've dragged my mouse or my cursor. Okay, and I can use that to see if it's wide enough for me to stitch or to cut out a circle with my existing eyelet punch. Maybe you have the one that came with your embroidery machine or sewing machine. Maybe you have OESD's Perfect Punch tool, which comes with multiple sizes. Maybe you have some other version. However, whatever version you have, you just want to kind of check and see, is this the right size? Now, if I come over here, back to my original, I don't remember what size I made these. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on, let's see, I'm gonna click on my ruler. And I'm just going to click on the outer edge of the first circle. They're all the same. And go to the other outer edge. Okay, so it's not quite 1.25 inches. 1.19 or 1.20 would probably be okay too. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select the entire color right here, which will automatically select both pieces. I'm going to do a right click. I'm going to combine them so that it sees them as one item. I'm going to click on the correct tool. There we go. Go back to my regular cursor instead of my ruler. Sometimes if something's not showing up that you think should, you might look over here and see, am I just not in my regular select tool? I'm going to come over here to transform. And now I'm going to say maintain aspect ratio, where everything will stay in the same kind of relative size. So you can see here when I changed this one, it automatically changed that one as well. I'll click apply and the whole thing will shrink down. So now it matches what I did for the other one. If you want bigger charms, you can certainly do bigger charms if you want a different shape. You can certainly do any of these shapes. You can even go down here to custom shape. And if you want to get really fancy with your charms, there are all of these pre-built artwork shapes from Floriani. You can also manually build your own shapes, which is a lesson for another day, but you don't have to do a circle. Certainly, you know, that's what I wanted. Doesn't mean that has to be what you want. Okay, so at this point, what I have here is still just artwork. If you look over here, it still calls it artwork. I want that to, of course, be stitches. So I'm going to come down here. We've got all my one-click wonders, okay, which will auto change whatever I have selected to the type of stitch listed in that particular icon. If you're not sure what one of them is, hover over it and it'll tell you what it is. That'll pop up. I just want a run stitch. Okay, I just want that to be a regular old run stitch. Okay, so now I can see that it is stitches. It says run over here, and it's even telling me that it is 73 stitches. Now, if I want that to be a little bit heftier, I can just make it a double run over here and click apply. But I wanted it to be even more obvious. I actually specifically, on the ones I made, I used a white material to stitch them on with black thread. I wanted those outlines to be a feature of the look of the design. So you can come over here and go to Bean Style in my properties. None means it'll stay just a single run. If I click Bean, it's going to ask me how many repeats do I want. Now 3 is kind of a standard bean stitch, but you can go all the way up to 11 if you really want it to look, you know, like hand stitched, you know, embroidery floss or something like that. Now be aware of how large something is before you do 11 repeats. This is a small item that might kind of make things a little bit bulky, but you know, 5, 3, somewhere in there is certainly a good option if that's the look that you're wanting. Now, if I look over here, it still looks just like a regular line as opposed to stitches. That is because I'm not viewing this with the 3D modeling turned on. If I want to kind of get a better idea of what it's going to look like in real life, I can come over here, tap my 3D icon, and all of a sudden, it's going to look like real stitches, or at least more real than it did before. So this is what we have so far for our number charm. So we build 1. Now, I've got 2 options, and I hope it'll be obvious which one is a better option. I can now copy and paste this and slavishly line it up, one after the other, or I can come over here. Give me 1 second. I'm going to select this, and then I want to do repeat design. Okay, that's my icon right here. Now, if I wanted it to be higgledy-piggledy, I could do fling repeat. That's going to just place them randomly, scale them to different things. That would be something if you're trying to create more of like a free-form design. This is something that we're going to cut out when it's done. I just want it to be a grid so that it's as effective a use of my materials when I stitch it out as possible. So I'm going to click repeat, and of course we need 24, right? An advent calendar is going to have 24 days on it. So I'm going to say 6 across and 4 down. Now, which I'm pretty sure makes 24. Yes, it does. It's fine. But if you look at it here, it's giving me a preview of what that's going to do. They are all butted up against each other right now, which if I was trying to create a continuous line quilting pattern, that would be perfect. I would want them to be seamless, right? But I don't want that for this. I want to be able to have not only the ability to cut them out, but to cut them out with about 1/8 of an inch buffer of material outside of my outline. Because this is going to be, I guess you could consider it kind of a raw edge applique. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start to increase the distance. Okay, and I've got 1/4 of an inch there. And of course you could type in 1/4 of an inch if you wanted, but clicking is not too bad just to get to 1/4 of an inch. And you can see here, it's going to distance them in the horizontal and vertical direction until I'm happy with the distance. Again, this is, you know, in part guesswork as you design a pattern that you've maybe never done before. But if I know I want 1/8 of an inch between them, then even to cut them out perfectly, That's 1/8 of an inch on each side. So 1/8 plus 1/8 is 1/4. So I need at least 1/4 of an inch between all of the extreme outer points of my circles. So if you want to give yourself a little bit more of a buffer in case you're not as clean of a cutter as you'd like to be, certainly you can increase the distance more, but anything less than that, I'm not going to be able to get that 1/8 of an inch on every circle outside of my stitch line. Okay, so I'm going to say apply, and I'm going to say okay. All right, and so now it's going to automatically populate my repeat, right? So now I've got it where if you look on my stitch out over here, my sequence view, I've got them all there. So now if I run my stitch simulator, you can see it's really just going to stitch them one after another, after another, after another. So that's great. That's a good start. Now, if you just wanted charms, and maybe you're going to do, you're going to paint on them, or you're going to do who knows what on them, fingerprints, or puff paint, whatever you want to do, you could just stitch this out and have nice blank charms to work with. Or you can do what we did, which is to add in the numbers here. Now, I picked a font that I liked. That does not mean you have to use this font. The only thing I'll say though, and if any of you know of a faster way to do this, please leave it in the comments. I did go ahead and input each number, and then I positioned it. So that had to be a little bit more manual, if only because as the numbers get higher, of course, they take up more space, all of that kind of stuff. Maybe some of them visually centered, wasn't mathematically centered, right? So what I did for that is I created some guidelines by clicking on my ruler across the top here and pulling down to where I wanted the bottom edge of the number to be for each row. And right now I'm just kind of doing it quickly, but you can go in and do it very precisely if you want. Now this particular row does have a center line based on the grid that I've got, but the rest of them do not. So if I want, I can also say, okay, here's center for each of my rows, or my columns, I should say. Let's see. And then a trackpad's not always the easiest way, guys. I'm just doing it nice and quick here. If you have a mouse or if you have a graphics tablet, I do highly recommend utilizing that. But I can always click and adjust these again later if I want to. So this one to me is like a pixel over, or however you want to conceive of it. You can certainly move it. And then I come over here to my text, which is right up here. I'm going to click on it. I have all these different options for text, but I really just need the regular text. I don't need it to be on a curve or anything like that. I'm just doing some numbers. So I'm going to click on text, and I'm going to click into the screen somewhere that is not already a stitched place. It's always going to automatically input the words my text. What I can do is it'll open on my properties, if you guys can see that on the side, a text box here that also says my text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say I just need the number 1 for this one. And it's going to change to the number 1. Now at this point, I can go through and I can look through all my fonts and I can decide which one I want. You can kind of do it one at a time and see, okay, do I like the number? Or to save myself some time, I can come over here to Font Play. I'm going to click Font Play. Now I can utilize this to do any amount of font that I want. But I can automatically from here input the text that I want. So I can come in here to settings. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, so on and so forth, to see if I like what those numbers look like. And it'll give me that preview. And if nothing appears, probably that font does not have those numbers. So on Academy Bean here, I have nothing. But if I come down here to Elena 4mm, I do have numbers. This to me is the fastest way to go through and quickly see if I like the specific font in the specific characters that I need. That being said, if I'm happy with that, and of course you can see here there's so many fonts to go through, and this is just the fonts that are built in to Floriani. That doesn't include if I want to also do TrueType fonts over here, which is literally any font on my computer, including any that you download. But you can, once you're happy with the font you have chosen, and I liked this amber. I thought it was a nice look. If I'm like, okay, 1 through 6 is what I actually needed to say, I can click import, and it's gonna automatically give me what I just input. I will say for this particular task, that's actually not as advantageous as the other option, which is that I used it to pick a font, but then I'm gonna come back over here, I'm gonna delete that one, I'm gonna come over here to my 1, okay, and I'm gonna say A, I'm gonna say amber, and I'm gonna say apply. Okay, and so now I've made this one amber, but you can see here, it's too tall. Okay, so I go to my ruler, and I'm gonna measure on the next one just because it's not got anything in the way. From here to here, okay, we're looking at 0.57 inches. So I clicked a little below the circle for the cutout, down to where I have my bottom guideline that I placed by clicking and dragging from my ruler, 0.54. So I can use that as a guide for how tall to make my letter. Right now I can see over here that my letter is 0.79. Now I can do 0.54, but I'm just gonna give it a nice round ½ inch. You know, nothing wrong with that. I find it difficult when I've got something selected. I have all these tools around it to sometimes see what I'm doing. So I'm also gonna come in here to my zoom tool, and I'm gonna get that nice and zoomed in so that I can still actually see what is happening. And then I'm just gonna click and drag it into place, okay? Now, at this point, I'm just gonna go through, and I can either come back to text, click my T again, click again where it says it'll say my text. It'll stay with whatever the most recent font you selected. And then I can do a 2. I'm gonna change it to 0.5 inches tall, ½ inch, and then I can move it, right? Alternatively, and perhaps simpler than what that entailed, is I can come over here to my number 1, and I can copy it. I'm using the keystroke Control C and then Control V. And if you look over here, I now have 2 number 1s. If I select the second one, I make it a 2. It's already the right height, all of that kind of stuff. And then it's just a matter of moving it over. Now, what I did at this point when I was actually generating the full file was I made 24 copies of the number 1, and then I loosely moved them into each circle, and then I changed them as I went through. It did take a hot minute to do that, but I think it's really worthwhile. I think it looks really cute. I did go ahead and make the circles black and the numbers black, except when I got down here to the end, I thought it would be a little bit fun if Christmas Eve could be a different color. So I did select that number on its own and change the color. So to do that, we'll come back over here to our sample file, and I'm gonna click on just the number 2. If you're having trouble getting a hold of it over here, you can come over to your sequence view and select it. But once it is selected, I can come down here to my color ribbon, and I want it to be something that is clearly different from the rest of them. Now, our machines are not quite smart enough yet to know what color is in there. Not really. They'll show a color on the screen, but the machine doesn't know at the end of the day what color you put in. So if it's helpful for you to put the color that you want to use, right, then by all means, that is awesome. You can do that. But you can also just pick something that is different. When the color is different, the step changes. So if you look over here now, once I clicked on a new color, it changed my 2 to that color, and it becomes a new step, When I click away from it, I can see now in my screen that it is in fact a different color. Now, if I want my text, all of my numbers, to stitch out separately from my circles, I can make it a different color as well. And I can come in here to my circles, and we're gonna say, well, I really want those to stitch out black. So I can go through here and turn them black. And if you come back over here to my finished version, I feel like Martha Stewart, you'll see that the first step is the circles. The second step, it's black, but it's a slightly different shade of black, and so it made it into 2 different steps, is the main set of numbers. And the last step is just the 24, because I wanted that to be a different color. So once you have this part done, you can simply, of course, save it, and we'll pretend that this one's done. Now, I can just save it with just the regular save. It'll save it as a WAF file is what it'll automatically default to. But I'm going to say newit2.waf. If I think I'm going to change it again, I'm going to make sure I save a WAF version, and I'll save this one to my desktop. If I know I'm ready, and I've already saved a WAF to just keep on deck to have if I want to change it, but I'm ready to stitch this out on my machine, I'm going to go to Save As, or you can go back to Save, but Save As will make a copy. And now I'm going to come up here to my file type options, and I'm going to go to the most recent version of the Baby Lock PES file type. All that means is that it can take advantage of the largest hoop available now with the newer machines. Even if my file doesn't need that, I always suggest doing the latest option. Okay, so we'll do PES version 11. It'll change the file extension to PES, and I'll save it. And so from there, I can take that to my machine and stitch it however I like. Now, to learn that bit, if you want to go ahead and come to Club, you will learn all of that. So what we're going to do today is, one option you have for stitching this is Stitch and Shape, which is just a really great thick white material that is really good for things like hanging charms. So instead of turning the camera on myself, I'm just going to bring this down into the camera. Woo! Stitch and Shape. Okay, so this is going to be our giveaway for today. And so if you would like to win a roll of Stitch and Shape, all you need to do is like, comment, or share this video by Thursday at 5 p.m. We would love also, if you want, in the comments to let us know maybe what you would do with these, or if you know of a faster way to input the numbers. Maybe the tool over here that we looked at, the repeat design, it might work, but I was not brave enough to try it. So if you have ideas on that, please put it in the comments. If there's a different way you would like to do these charms, please leave that in the comments as well. And you'll be automatically entered to win a roll of Stitch and Shape to actually make some of these charms. Otherwise, if you don't win, of course, we all hope we win, but only one person will. We will also do 20% off of the Floriani Stitch and Shape material. And you know what? We'll do 20% off of the OESD Perfect Punch tool, which you can use to cut out these circles. So come on in and say that you want the New It 2 discount at any one of our stores in Fayetteville, Springfield, Humble, Oklahoma City, or Tulsa. We would love to see you and talk to you more about digitizing and things you can do for Christmas. And we'll have a lot of fun doing it, I think. So thank you guys for joining me in this somewhat behind the camera New It 2 this week. I look forward to seeing you again next week, and happy sewing. Bye.